Lots to talk about with Labor's Agriculture and Resources spokesperson Joel Fitzgibbon. He joins me now live from Canberra. Thanks for joining us, Joel. I want to get to some of your portfolio issues in just a moment, but just first up, can you tell us what the allegation is here about Angus Taylor? Are we seriously suggesting that he's changed $1,700 into $1.7 million and $4,000 into $14 million in a letter and expected to get away with it?
Well, Chris, as an old institutional man in this place, for me, one of his greatest crimes is to mislead the Parliament. And he has so obviously done that by assuring the Parliament that he nor his staff were involved in the reproduction, if you like, of that document. So there's an offence straight away, and in parliamentary terms, it's a very, very serious offence.
Well, how's it an offence? We know that he's downloaded the document or printed off a document, and somehow in translation that the numbers are incorrect. How do we know? What's the suggestion of how that happened, or who did it, or where it happened?
In translation, is that what they're calling it now, Chris?
Well, I don't know. I'm wondering whether you might know. So
well,
somehow, I mean, it's not the first time someone's got numbers wrong.
Well, he originally claimed that he downloaded it from the City of Sydney website, and that's how it appeared straight off their website. But the City of Sydney tells us that their metadata says that's just simply not true. So then the question becomes, who did doctor the document so that he could have his political go at the Lord Mayor of Sydney? Now, I don't think they were elves. It might be nearly Christmas, Chris, but I don't think it was the elves. It either had to be the minister or someone on his staff. Who else would reproduce and doctor that document in that way? There's no logic in claiming it could have been anyone else. Now, if he has some other rational explanation, well, let him deliver it in the Parliament. But after weeks of inquiry, he certainly has made no attempt to do so. Well,
I don't want to waste too much time on it because, I mean, it is just numbers that are wrong, and the numbers are in a letter going back to the person who produced the numbers, supposedly. So, and the numbers weren't even central to his claim. So the whole thing, to me, seems a bit of a sideshow. Well, no, they weren't. He was criticising.
Absolutely central.
He was saying, why are you going on about a climate emergency while you're flying people around the country and around the world?
And then the document, as doctored, hugely embellished.
Yeah, exactly.
The numbers
that much
to
we
make
agree
that
on.
Sound more exciting. Now, so who had an interest? I mean, if I were the minister, Chris, and someone said, look, you should write to the Lord Mayor in these terms, and I saw those numbers, I would have immediately said, well, hang on a minute, that can't be right. Councillors couldn't be undertaking that level of travel. Now, that's giving him the benefit of the doubt because that's suggesting it wasn't him himself who doctored the document to make it look better. We just don't know because
I agree with you on that much, as I said at the outset.
Those questions.
Yeah, that's why I didn't repeat those numbers at the time. They seemed implausibly high. So there's no doubt there's been some sort of a stuff-up. It's a silly error. But anyway, we'll see. Police are involved now, and let them go for it. I want to get onto some of these issues here that are crucial when it comes to agriculture. Firstly, Chinese investment. Do you have any concerns about the level of Chinese investment we're seeing in the dairy industry now, with Bellamy's being purchased, and that same Chinese company now looking to take over some other Australian brands?
A few points there, Chris. Certainly we need a lot of investment in the agriculture sector if we are to build the scale and build the productivity we'll need to sustain the industry here and to make us more competitive on global markets. And ironically, it was Angus Taylor who was the lead author in a report known as Greener Pastures. It's a bit old now. I think it dates back to 2015. But Angus concluded that to get to where we'd like to be in the agriculture sector by 2050, we'd need around $600 billion worth of investment. Now, as a population of $25 million, by definition, much of that investment, the lion's share of that investment, in fact, will need to come from foreign sources. And traditionally, it's come from the UK and the US and Canada and New Zealand. But as Asia continues to grow, it will increasingly come from Asia. And that's a good thing, that they see value in our agriculture sector. Now, we need a framework, an architecture which ensures that when these investments flow in, they are absolutely in the national interest, and that's why we have a Foreign Investment Review Board. Now, after 6 years in government, that's an architecture owned very much by this current government, and they appointed David Irvine, the former top spy here in Australia, to chair the board, to reassure people that we've got someone who understands the security issues chairing those important meetings, and the Foreign Investment Review Board has waved through these investments. So I think all of us need to express confidence in the process, because if we don't express confidence in the process, we'll undermine it, we'll get more community concern, and investors will start looking elsewhere.
Yeah, spot on. Yet yesterday when I asked Pauline Hanson about Chinese investment, she said that she believes China is investing heavily in Australia because they want to bring some of their population here. They're running out of room. Does that sort of rhetoric alarm you?
Well, I don't see the link, Chris, and I often say to people who express to me concern about Chinese buying farms, well, they can't take it with them. And, you know, if Chinese investment in our farms gives us better access into China's big markets. I mean, we talk all of the time, Chris, about the importance of free trade agreements. Why do we do that? Because it gives us better access into those Asian markets. Indeed. Well, if investment gives us access too, well, surely that's a good thing.
Yeah. Now, you, of course, are a New South Wales MP. Your area of the Hunter has been hit very badly by the drought. You would understand the frustration of drought-affected regions in New South Wales, seeing water entitlements flow through to South Australia, environmental water entitlements. What are your thoughts on John Barilaro, the Nationals leader and Deputy Premier in New South Wales, suggesting that his state could rip up the Murray-Darling Basin Agreement because it just doesn't want to, in the height of a drought, doesn't want to send these environmental flows through?
Well, there are plenty of things John Barilaro and I agree on. One of them is the extraction of more gas in New South Wales, particularly the Narrabri project, but I think he's got this one wrong. Look, it took more than 100 years to arrive at a settlement on the Murray-Darling Basin Plan. We all know it's not perfect. We all know it could be substantially improved, and we all know that not having it would be worse. So we've got to maintain, I believe, a level of bipartisanship here, and I think David Littleproud, the current minister, would tell you that the Labor Party has been as cooperative as we can on changes, because we don't want the thing falling apart. Because again, while it's not perfect, the alternative, which is not having an arrangement between the Commonwealth and the states, would be a lot worse.
Just very briefly then, because we're almost out of time, what's the one thing you would see the federal government doing now on the drought that it's not doing?
I think it needs to give the community reassurance that there's a plan, Chris. These ad hoc piecemeal announcements every month or so, kicking the challenge down the road, they're not giving anyone reassurance that the government first understands the scope and scale of the problem, the likely further longevity of the problem, and therefore doesn't have in place contingencies for each of those various scenarios. I think if a government had a plan, then people would feel more reassured. But farmers out there keep hearing Scott Morrison throw dollar figures around like it's confetti, but none of them ever see any of it and ever witness any changes as a result. So some high-level thinking and enunciation of that thinking would help, I think, to build confidence. And I could talk for about an hour, Chris, about
I know you could.
where I would start that
we are
process.
out of time. Thanks so much for joining us, Joel Fitzgibbon.
A pleasure, Chris.
Joel Fitzgibbon.